Transgender athletes in sports has been a big topic of debate for many years now. An inclusive solution hasn't been reached by any country or organization. My thesis for this vlog is we all need to change the way we think about gender to be more inclusive and to figure out an answer to the question of how we allow transgender athletes into the sports with the gender they identify as. So in the US, many states have banned specifically trans women and trans girls from participating in female sports. In the UK, they have a policy where they allow trans people to participate in the sport with the gender they identify as, stating there should be no assumption that a transgender athlete automatically has an unfair advantage. As we can see, the UK has a much more inclusive approach than the US. So I read a Forbes article titled "Fair and Inclusive Solution for Transgender Women in Sports." In this article, the author proposed a, quote, women's sports umbrella, where all people who identify as female would be invited to try out for women's sports teams with one caveat: competition. So under this proposal, trans athletes would be able to participate in the sports with the gender they identify as, and they would be scored in a separate transgender category so that competition is fair. The author goes on to say, the women's sports umbrella also provides solutions for others who may fall outside of the female and male binary, intersex, non-binary, and gender fluid people. When thinking about this approach, we need to ask ourselves, is fairness in sports more important than inclusivity? And is creating a third transgender category fair? This isn't a perfect solution, and I don't know if I agree with it, but I think the authors of this article have the right idea in trying to be more inclusive. So I read a BBC article titled "Transgender Athletes, What Do the Scientists Say?" This article is from the UK. So the scientists that they interviewed for this article didn't have conclusive data, nor did they agree on a solution for the question. One of the scientists interviewed said, if we maximize inclusion, it does come at some cost to fairness and safety. But I think that we can come up with solutions which, while they may not maximize any one of these three parameters, come pretty close to maximizing all three, and that none of these important parameters, inclusion, safety, and fairness, are overly impacted. And a human rights lawyer who was also interviewed for the article said, the focus on human rights is necessary to ensure a balance. It shouldn't be one or the other. The science should not be the turning factor on this. It has to be also a matter of law, regulation, sociology, athletes, and human rights ultimately, because these athletes are individuals. I think whenever we're thinking about this, we need to think about both sides, the scientific side and then also the human rights side. So I think that the BBC article has the right idea. I'm also not trying to propose a solution. I think this is a very complicated matter, and the eventual outcome isn't going to satisfy everyone. But I know we can do better to support our transgender communities and allow them the same spaces and opportunities as cisgendered people.